The most important occurrences during Thomas Jefferson's presidency, and that was the rise of Chief Justice John Marshall, and with him, the entire judicial branch. Here are the questions that you should be able to answer by the end of the video. Okay, so as you might remember, in the election of 1800, the Federalists lose big to Thomas Jefferson's Republican Party. One of the last things the Federalists do, they actually do it in the year 1801, after they already know they're going to lose control of the presidency and of Congress, is the Judiciary Act of 1801. And it's one of the very last laws signed by Adams before he leaves. And with this act, the Federalists created 16 new important positions in the judicial branch of the federal government. And what this does is it allows the Federalists to fill these new important positions with Federalist supporters. So even though they're going to lose control of the executive branch and the legislative branch, they hope that they'll be able to retain control of the judicial branch for a long time to come. That's the main result of the Judiciary Act, and the reason this is possible is that once judges are appointed, they get to serve for life. So by packing the judicial branch with lots of Federalists, they hope that their viewpoints will remain important in the federal government. So after the Republicans take power, they attempt to get rid of the Judiciary Act of 1801. And they do manage to get rid of many of the new judges that Adams had appointed. But there was one guy that they weren't able to get rid of, and he turns out to be the most important. His name was John Marshall. That's his picture there. And he's very important because he was a very powerful personality who happened to be the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And he was Chief Justice for 34 years. So he served way longer than any presidents or most senators. He served as long as some kings or queens serve. And he was in control of the Supreme Court, and he was a big supporter of the Federalist agenda. That means he wanted a strong central government, he wanted national unity, he supported trade and industry over farming. And so he was a powerful guy in the judiciary branch that could continue to further Federalist goals, even though the Federalists never won another election after 1800. And another very important thing that he does while serving as Chief Justice is he expands the power of the Supreme Court. The main court case in which John Marshall expands the power of the Supreme Court is known as Marbury versus Madison. And this was the first major case of Marshall's career serving as Supreme Court Justice. And basically, this court case gave him a chance to expand the power of the Supreme Court. How the case happened was this. James Madison, who was the new Secretary of State serving under Thomas Jefferson, blocked one of the judges that was appointed by John Adams, whose name was William Marbury. William Marbury, of course, was unhappy about this because he wanted to take his new sweet position as a judge. And so he sued Madison in order to try and get his spot back. This court case made it all the way up to the Supreme Court. And in the Supreme Court, John Marshall decided to dismiss Marbury's case because he believed that Marbury's attempt to sue James Madison was unconstitutional. This turns out to be extremely important. The reason it's so important is that Marshall's decision in Marbury versus Madison sets a precedent. And remember, a precedent is a decision that serves as a guide for future decisions on similar subjects. So John Marshall's decision basically serves as an example for all future Supreme Court justices. And the precedent that he establishes was that the Supreme Court could use its power of judicial review to declare certain laws and legal actions unconstitutional. This allows the judicial branch to check the power of the other branches of government. It also makes the federal government stronger because it takes the right of interpreting the Constitution away from the states and gives it to the branch of the federal government. You might remember after the Alien and Sedition Acts, when Virginia and Kentucky attempted to nullify those acts by declaring them unconstitutional at the state level. John Marshall takes this right away from the states and gives it to the Supreme Court, which makes the federal government stronger and all of the states weaker, which remember is what Federalists want. So there's some famous words that came from John Marshall's decision in the Marbury v. Madison case. And he said, "It's emphatically the province and duty of the judicial department to say what the law is." Translated into normal English, this means that the Supreme Court gets to decide what the federal government can and cannot do. This is a huge power that the Supreme Court still wields today, and it allows them to check the power of the legislative and the executive branches. The power of the Supreme Court to do this is extremely important and will come up again and again in United States history. Here are the questions that you can hopefully now answer. I hope you enjoyed this video.